Paul survived the murderous plots of the Jews in Palestine. Will he escape them just to go and be killed in Rome? What will happen to him on the long, dangerous sea voyage when he stands before Caesar? What will be the emperor's judgment? I'll come in and see next week. Goodness me.
Sounds exciting.
Well, this is true. It's better than Coronation Street, this, you know. Maybe we won't learn answers to all these questions, but let's read on to see what we learn, what we can learn. Okay. So there's the journey all the way to Rome. Quite a long journey, quite a dangerous journey to the time of year he went on, and as we're going to see, it ends up in semi-tragedy. But having said that, it makes an impact on the places that he ends up with. So it's a lot of good stuff.
Paddling his own canoe, was he? He wasn't paddling his own canoe, was he?
He had to paddle a little bit for a short period near the end, yes. So he decided he would sail for Italy. Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. We boarded a ship from Adramyttium, about to sail for ports along the coast of the province of Asia, and we put out to sea. Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was with us. Alright, so what's a possible date for them setting off? Spring AD. There's always a little bit of leeway. That's a good seafaring term to use as we've set off on a sea journey. Okay, a bit of leeway. Augustus Caesar. Did Luke travel with Paul to Rome? How do we know? There was another Christian man who travelled with him. Where was he from? We learned later there was 276 people on board the ship, including an unnumbered group of prisoners, probably also bound for Rome. All the prisoners were under the charge of Julius and his soldiers. The Imperial regiment, actually Augustine's regiment, to which this centurion belonged, was being created by Augustus, probably for special missions. Possibly an early version of the SAS. Mysia was a region in the Roman province of Asia. The ship was from Adramyttium, a city on the coast of Mysia in Asia Minor, formerly called Aelius. The ship picked up Paul, the other prisoners, and the guards at Caesarea, and it was probably on its way to which meant it would be sailing north in the Aegean Sea and out on west to Italy. So it wasn't going directly to Italy, it was going the other way, it was going round. So Paul and the other Rome-bound passengers got off at Myra and changed ship. Myra was a city on the coast of Lycia. Its present name is Cathli, where Paul and his companion were aboard an Alexandrian ship bound for Rome. But before they got to Myra, they were stopped at Sidon in Phoenicia, that's in Lebanon. There, Julius would allow Paul to visit the Christians. It's an interesting situation. You hear some of these names that we are not so much really familiar with in our Western culture. Lebanon, Syria, and all these places that we look at that today and say, well, they're Muslim countries, you know, and we probably don't have a lot of understanding much about them. But historically, once you go back through time, a lot of these areas played a huge part in the early history of some of these great nations like Rome, like Greece, and some of these others. So the same names keep popping up. Turkey, you go way back, Iraq, you go way back, and there's a lot of civilization. And we look from our position of superiority in the West now, with all that education, think, what are they all about? They're in a mess, these people, some of these people. And yet, the intelligence, the skills that they had, and skills they demonstrated, the civilizations that they had way before we were properly civilized, it makes you stop and think that in our part in history. Yes, the nations come and nations go. Okay, all those famous places. Okay, the next day they landed at Sidon, and Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends so they might provide for his needs. From there we put to sea again and passed on to the Lee of Cyprus because the winds were against us. When we sailed across the open sea off the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra and Lycia. Some reasons for having joy, comfort and peace, and from finding Christians around the world. In Paul's experience, he had been involved in setting up congregations all around parts of this world. And even though he's a prisoner, because he's in good relationship with the chief prison officer, he's allowed a little bit of freedom that you wouldn't think would be allowed a prisoner. And that's something to do with the status of why he's going to Rome and how he's going to Rome. But the thing is that wherever he went, he tried to identify himself with the local congregation. not only to encourage them, but to be encouraged by them. So, and second, some of the reasons for that is found, 2 Peter 1 verse 1, he says, we have a like precious faith. Jude 3, we have a wonderful gift of salvation in common. 1 John 3 verse 1, we have experienced the love of God and being able to be called His children. Romans 8, 16 and 17, we are heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. Romans 12, 5 and 15 and 1 Corinthians 12, 26, we are members one another in the body of Christ. We have the same care for one another and we rejoice and mourn with each other. So there's a common bond. There's a couple more. We comfort, I should have put in front of some of these, we ought, okay? We comfort and edify each other. We provoke each other into love and good works. Our hearts are tied together in love. That love is the kind of love that Jesus has for us. It ought to be the kind of love that motivates us to lay down our lives for each other. This is how we ought to hold each other in high regard. So Christians are Christians. Hopefully, whatever part of the world we find ourselves in, and we find fellow Christians, we have that common bond in Christ together, something we share together, and it ought to be a good experience. I think in Jimmy and his daughter, Jimmy and Elsie, what's the last name again? Who was here 30 years ago?
Stewart?
Jimmy Stewart. He's due to be coming into the horizon sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh,
So so it should be turn up on a Sunday morning. I'll get him to preach. You know that. He never was a preacher.
I don't think he will.
No, I don't think he will either. But it's, we haven't seen him for years. And of course, he's going to be bald,
And fat.
and probably fat. Is he really?
Last time he visited us in Surrey.
Okay.
He put on a bit of weight.
Okay, jolly good. Well, you sometimes need that to be able to, stave off the difficult conditions you find yourself in. Anyway, but it's nice, when you met somebody years and years ago, and you suddenly meet them again. The Christians unite, and it's nice to be able to share and see they're still in the faith. Okay. Paul had many more friends than enemies wherever he went. That's in the Christian side, obviously. By the time he was travelling in the eastern half of the Roman Empire, he's had a hand in establishing many congregations. His fellow workers, those he trained, are preaching and teaching all over Syria, Phoenicia, Asia Minor, Macedonia and Greece. He knows many of the Christians in Rome. In fact, many of them are his relatives, as we learn from the 16th chapter of the book of Romans. So lots of interesting things and people that he's looking forward to seeing. I think it's amazing when you think 2,000-year-old, these amphitheatres, the way they used to build things for projection of voice and the meetings they had, and they're still there, cut out the rocks. Takes you back in time.
I hope one in Kettering.
Can you one in Kettering?
Well, I haven't one in
They're
Kettering.
building it.
What, an amphitheatre?
Yeah, in the old marketplace.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Ah. I'll be sorry for the kids to do it now. Okay. Leaving Sidon, they sailed to leave Cyprus because the wind was against them. They spent the sail along the south coast of Cyprus. So the island and its mountains would block the north wind. The lee means from away from or out of the wind. In days of sailing ships that relied exclusively on wind power, the direction and intensity of the wind were important considerations whenever you sailed something. And there's a typical kind of bark that would have been around at that time.
They had a lot of people on board, didn't they?
It was a big ship, 276 people. That's just
That's just the passengers and then slaves on top of that.
You have some, You have, no, 276 was total.
I suspect that they were mainly slaves bound for the arena.
Could be. There, a centurion found an Alexandrian sailing ship for Italy and put us on board. We made slow headway for many days, had a difficulty arriving off Cnidus. When the wind didn't allow us to hold our course, we sailed to leave Crete opposite Salmone, and we moved along the coast with difficulty and came to the place called the Fair Havens near the town of Lasea. So it's a time of year when really this is a long journey they're embarking on, and it might be better to hold off for a little bit more time. And actually, Paul is going to suggest that this place, Fair Havens, wasn't called Fair Havens for nothing. A lot of ships would have stayed there until the weather improved and the wind improved to be able to make a move on. But there are different considerations, and they don't pay any attention to what Paul says, as we're going to see. The Centurion and his business transferred to the Alexandrian ship at Mera, bound for Italy, and sailed west when the headwind blew. It was slow and difficult going for the ship. I should have messed that right. They sailed from Cyprus, turning southward, avoid a straight head-on wind down the other side of Crete. Johnson's note says that the winds from the northwest would be broken up by the highlands of the island. He says that the information about the travel is so accurate and detailed that it must have been written by an eyewitness. And many people today, and there's lots of writers down to the ages, have commented on the fact that what Luke describes here in this shipward journey is probably one of the most accurate and best ship's logs, the earliest ship's logs that there have ever been. You know, it's recorded all the instances they went through, and you can sail that route again today, and nothing much has changed. You can still end up in the same bad trouble. One thing is now we've got big diesel engines to get us out of trouble. But it's an excellent ship's log. And it would be nice. If you weren't a prisoner, it would be quite nice, wouldn't it? People would pay for a good journey like that these days. Snyder's was to the northwest, and Salmone at the eastern tip of the island of Crete was to the southwest. Passing along the southern east coast of the island, they came to a place called Fairhavens near the town of Lasea. Why did I put that twice? I don't know. Fairhavens might have lived up to the promise of the name if the ship's owner and the Centurion had listened to Paul and stopped there until the weather was better for sailing. But, okay, much time had been lost. Sailing had already become dangerous because by now it was after the fast. So Paul warned them, men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to the shipping cargo and to our own lives also. But when you think you're behind, when you're in a hurry to get somewhere, you don't always pay real attention to all the complications. And in this case, they were thinking, well, you know, if we can get to where we want to go fast enough, then we'll be able to turn our profit over a little bit quicker and also get this sorted out. Maybe they even had some, as Frank said, maybe some of the games are waiting for some slaves to be thrown into the arena. So they had a deadline to meet. But whatever it was, they decided to pull out the stops. Paul described they should have listened to him. Okay, so that's where they are, and that's where they're going to go. You can see it's a big, massive ocean that they're about to get stuck into. Paul predicted the doom for ship and passengers. My opinion is that would have occurred naturally. What would have occurred naturally did not happen. God was merciful to all of them because Paul was among them. The ship was lost, but all the lives were saved, as we shall see later. So they tried to sail a little bit further down the south coast of Crete to Phoenix, a harbour that would offer more protection from the wind and weather, described as facing both southwest and northwest. So that's a site of Phoenix and Crete. These, most of you guys here, or some of you anyway, you've been out in some of these island areas, and you see the view from the sea inland. You see these white buildings really standing out, and yet all around it, because of the kind of weather they have, you know, I remember last time I went to Spain, the significant difference between when you go back to the coast of Spain, in the north, where it's all just northish, so it's all dry and barren. And then you come back into Portsmouth, and what you see when you come back into Portsmouth, everything's green. You think, wow, back home, this is where we should be. We don't like to eat anyway. When a gentle south wind began to blow, they thought they had obtained what they wanted, so they weighed anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. Before very long, a wind of hurricane force called the northeaster swept down upon the island. The ship was caught by the storm and couldn't head into the wind, so we gave way to it and were driven along. Okay. There's the lee of the Benin. We had to make a lifeboat secure. When the men had hoisted aboard, they passed ropes under the ship itself to hold it together, fearing it would run aground in the sandbars beside it. They lowered the sea anchor and let the ship be driven along. So that's an interesting thing. Now, here you are on board a ship, and you see these guys throwing ropes over, and then coming up to how they did that. That's quite.
You call it frapping.
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 They are. They were actually literally tying the ship together. You know, if you weren't a sailor and you weren't familiar with that, that'd be quite a horrifying idea. What's happening? Well, we're just holding the ship together. Here, put your finger on the knot. Oh, dear. Okay. So again, quite a frightening experience to see some of these things happening. And that's their sea anchoring. The ship went all aboard in big trouble now. It was hopeless to try and sail towards Italy, so they battened down the hatches, roll up the sails, secure the ropes, tie everything down, throw out the sea anchors and just try to ride out the storm. Okay, a sea anchor is like a large underwater parachute that is dragged behind a ship to slow it down. Susan was saying tonight on, I don't know whether it was news or programs you were watching, but Alec Tate, this must be an old film of the fishing. He just took on his new boat, £12 million trawler. £12 million trawler. And he's been in some rough seas, but I think these new ships will be a little bit...
Yeah, Alex says a Peter Head.
Yeah. £12 million.
Alex who?
Alec Tate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part financed by European Union, part financed by the government, part financed by the bank.
So it's
That's
not
how,
his
that's
boat.
how it's done.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of fish you've got to catch to pay that lot back.
With that kind of...
So they even strengthened the bottom of the ship by passing ropes on it held together. And as Frank says, there should be modern translations being sandbar or quicksand in Greek as a proper name for the great sandbars of the west coast of Cyrene, modern Libya. NIV and SRV have the paraphrase sandbars of Cyprus. That's the kind of thing they're up against. Yes, very nice. I think, was it you went out with Alec John on a boat out to Peterhead Harbour? Somebody describes that and we're absolutely horrified.
If you wanted me to go out on the boat, but I wouldn't go.
You wouldn't go.
No.
A sensible person. Yes, I'd be quite agreed with that, yes. So it took such a violent battering from the storm, the next day they began to throw the cargo overboard. So this is the cargo they were hoping to rush through to get their profit back on. But it's in dire straits. The huge ships tackle overboard with their own hands. When neither sun nor star appeared for many days and the storm continued raging, we finally gave up all hope of being saved. Okay? Okay, tempestuous. So after the men had gone a long time without food, Paul stood up and said, "Men, you should have taken my advice." Yes, there's always one in there. See, why did you do what I told you? Anyway, you would have spared yourselves the damage and loss. Now I urge you to keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. Okay, now I don't know whether that's good news or bad news. Alright? But, said last night an angel of God of the God of whose I am, and whom I serve, stood beside me and said, "Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar. God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. Keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God it will happen just as he told me. Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island." Which I suppose if you're out in the middle of the ocean, at least that's good news. You've got to get somewhere near some land in some way. Okay, on the 14th night we were still being driven across the Adriatic Sea. When about midnight the sailors sensed they were approaching land. They took soundings and found the water was 120 feet deep. A short time later they took soundings again and found it 90 feet deep. Feeling that we would be dashed against the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight. Which is interesting, shows that godly men on board this ship. Let's hope we survive till morning.
Okay. Most sailors are.
A lot of, yeah. Well, they've got a healthy respect for, you've got a huge sky above you, a huge sea all around you, and some of these situations, again, that would put a fear of God into them. Okay, a sounding line. Okay, it makes a noise, ding, ding, when you've got, Anyway, still caught in storm and now being blown northwest towards Italy. The sailors since approached land. Difference in the rock of the ship, maybe, the movement, the height of the waves, something, maybe you could even get smell. Because if you're a sailor and you're used to different, especially when they throw the junk overboard at the end of the day. Anyway, just at the end, the boy crashing into shore, they began dropping lead weighted sounding line. Okay. Not line every fathom. A fathom was the reach of the average man from the fingers of one hand to the fingers of the other hand, with the arms spread out to the sides. The fathom came to be standardized at about 6 feet. When the bottom popped up to 90 feet, the sailors dropped 4 anchors from the ship. Hoping the anchors would hold, they waited anxiously and prayed for daylight. So that's the kind of picture you get. At the escape from the ship, the sailors let the lifeboat down the sea, pretending they were going to lower some anchors from the bow. And Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, unless these men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved. So the soldiers cut the ropes that held the lifeboat and let it fall away. Alright, there goes the lifeboat. Alright, now we're in trouble. Now they believed Paul. The centurion and the owner of the ship are convinced that Paul is indeed a prophet and they'll do anything asked him to do. It must have taken faith to cut loose the only lifeboat they had. Now they look to Paul for further orders. The first thing they must do is eat to get their strength up. Paul urges him to do so. After Paul gave thanks, he gave them food, he ate, then they began to eat. Ship's biscuit or hardtack. Isn't that something that's gone down through the ages? Hardtack. Okay? There's different forms of it. Just before dawn, Paul urged them to all eat. For the last 14 days you have been in constant suspense and gone without food. You haven't eaten anything. Now I urge you to take some food. You need to survive. Not one of you will lose a single hair from his head. So they hadn't eaten for 14 days, according to this account. They believe Paul's prediction and are now ready to eat. This is hardtack in a different form. These holes here are not made by weevils, but you know they're a nice place for the weevils to stay. After he said this, he took some bread and gave thanks to God in front of them all and broke it and began to eat. They were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. Altogether, 276 of us on board. When they'd eaten as much as they wanted, they lightened the ship by throwing the grain into the sea. So they'd probably been eating grain. Hardtack in a different form, also called common crackers.
Yeah, that tells you what the ship was really.
A grain ship?
It was a
Mainline.
grain ship hired by the Roman authorities, on which you
Favorable.
always had a captain and a centurion.
To protect the cargo. The bread Paul wrote and gave them might have been hardtack. It had always been a staple food on sailing ships. If it contained some salt, some salt and kept dry, it would last months. Or if it contained some salt and kept dry, it would last for months without spoiling. You mix them up for work. Okay. This had been a large vessel ship for those days, carrying 276 passengers and crew. Here we are told the grain was tossed overboard. Earlier we read the cargo was tossed overboard in the storm. This grain must be for the food as well as cargo, I suppose. The cargo, I don't know. Anyway, I'll have to do a bit more research on that. When daylight came, they didn't recognise the land, but they saw a bay and a sandy beach where they decided to run the ship aground as they could. Cutting loose the anchors, they left them in the sea, at the same time untied the ropes that held the rudders. They hoisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. The ship struck a sandbar and ran aground, and the bow stuck fast and wouldn't move. The stern was broken to pieces by the pounding of the surf. So the weather's still bad, high sea, and the ship basically been broken up around them. With the early untied, so the ship could be steered and the foresail hoisted, and be blown bow fast onto the goose. They made a run for it. The ship runs aground, and the bow splashes into the sand. The bow stuck fast in the sand. The storm waves bound the stern. The ship was soon broken up and lost to the sea. They were still being some distance from the shore of the island, and the men were in danger of drowning. So a couple of different pictures here. The Roman, not men and women first, the Roman soldiers up there waiting for them to arrive, just in case they escape, which they're going to work on tomorrow. Soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent any of them from swimming away and escaping. But the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who would swim to jump overboard fast and get to land. The rest were to get on planks and pieces of the ship. And this way everyone reached the land in safety. The reason for that is we have seen from other lessons, if a soldier let a prisoner in his charge escape, the penalty was death for the soldier. Okay? So these soldiers were not going to pay the ultimate penalty for allowing prisoners to escape. So they covered their bets, so we're going to kill them. If Julius hadn't stopped them, we would have killed Paul and all the other prisoners as well. The centurion believed Paul and refused to allow any harm to come to them, so God saved all the passengers and crew, as Paul was amongst them. This painting. The centurion abandoned the ship, everyone swam to safety. Couldn't held on planks, everyone made it to safety, just as Paul said they would. This ended the journey of the voyage from the ship to Alexandria. It's been a long, eventful journey, and Paul still made it to Rome, but God has taken care of Paul and given the lives of all those who board the ship from Alexandria. Paul will have more exciting adventures on this mysterious island come next week. So today's survivors is a game, but this was no game. These men were true survivors with the help of God. So everybody managed to survive. Alright?
I was going to say the island was Malta. and you can go to St Paul's Bay in Malta,
Yep.
and when the tide is out, you can see the rocks, which you cannot see at full tide.
No.
And it's the only place around the island where two currents meet, so that it's always dangerous.
Yes, I've been there.
Oh, you've been there? Very good.
Yeah,
Good.
very nice.
So,
We were swimming on a nice piece on the other side of Green Bordeaux.
yeah.
But yeah, they highly respect Paul. They've got a lot of stuff and memorabilia
In the
of
church,
St.
yeah,
Paul and
so-
church and everything else.
Yeah.
And very religious people. It'd be hard to say it's a Catholic probably community, but a lot of the traditions and the stuff they do processions through the city every month, basically, doing one saint after another, and it's a very picturesque situation. And
Very Catholic too. It's all Catholic.
Clearly, yeah.
It's all Catholic.
So, but it's a nice, it's an interesting experience to have a look at. But the sea out there can be really, really bad, and if it hadn't been for Paul, they would have lost their lives. But because Paul was there, and because God had purpose for Paul, everybody was able to land safely. So next week we'll finish off the very last chapter in the book of Acts and see Paul get into Rome. Okay? Any questions? Is that exciting?
Oh, it was.
Yeah. Good. All right. Interesting how you see the changes in authority, if you like. Paul is the prisoner. But Paul is also built our rapport with the prison guard, and then as that changes through, he warns him. No, pay no attention to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But when they end up in bad trouble, suddenly he's elevated to a position of authority. What do we do next? And it's an interesting view into human nature, if you like. How we're very fickle in our allegiance to things, and quite often we don't always believe what's best for us until it's almost too late before we decide to sort things out. Okay?
Don't think that kind of thing would happen today.
What you think?
You know, if there was that situation that a
Prisoner.
Christian fella spoke up, and I don't think they would follow Christian advice.
Frank will probably give me the right story on this, but there was actually a book of a landowner and his servant, and they become obviously, first of all, you see the story of that relationship, but then they get shipwrecked on a desert island.
You're not talking about the Admirable Crichton, are you?
That's it.
That's right. You're right there, Roger.
So it's tip my tongue.
I was
And then,
there.
of course, he was there. So he gets on the island, and that son of the landowner, he's a real toe rag. He's rewriting history as it happens. And when they get back into civilization, suddenly it's the boss who's made all these good decisions and kept them alive all this time. Put all Titans, back in the doghouse again.
Yeah.
It's interesting. That's a
Kenneth Moore.
yeah, good. Okay, Frank, would you like to say some more that?
Again, Father, we come at the close of the day to ask for your blessing.
For us as well, I suppose you could say. This is the final chapter.
You're saying that's as long as the two Paul, isn't it?
Almost. Yes. Okay. Right. All right. Well, you got that one. You got that one in well. Yes. So he's. Matter of fact, let me just check that a minute. What am I doing there? I'll get it wrong. That was last week's. Isn't that exciting? All right.
Some we were having repeats.
No, it's not. Sorry about that. Just let me
Is this
check.
the BBC?
Just let me check it's in the right format. No, it's not. Okay. Okay, we'll have it. Normal service will be resumed very quickly. Okay. Let me lost my mouse again. That doesn't normally happen, does it?
No.
Let me get rid of this one altogether. The poor old computer will be complaining. Okay. No. Right. Okay. That's where we should be. See, grace you should have picked up on that, Acts 27 instead of 28. Because I know you finished the book last week as well, didn't you? You finished the book before I did.
She's ahead of us.
Alright, okay. So, last week we looked at Paul beginning his journey to Rome, and he ends up being shipwrecked in Malta. And we talked about the fact that in Luke, when he records this, it's one of the earliest and one of the best records of a ship's log that there is. And every shipping expert who looks at it is quite astounded by the accuracy. And even today you could probably follow all that routes and hit much the same problems as Paul did in his time. It's interesting also in chapter 27, 28, especially 28 verse 1, it talks in terms of we. Or chapter 27 verse 1, it talks in terms of we. Luke is back with him. Some people speculate in the last 2 years Luke's been spending some time gathering information ready for his 2 books, and therefore he's back with Paul. Some people say he actually travelled, him and Silas, under the idea of being Paul's slaves, which would give Paul a certain kudos, as even though he's a prisoner, he still has his own slaves. That would be quite a statement to make, so it's something not to be treated lightly. There's also something else in this journey. Though Paul's a slave, as the journey continues and as the shipwreck developed, Paul became the leader. He was the one who kept everything together. People were panicking, ready to throw everything overboard, get everything to throw themselves overboard, and he was the one who kept the lid on things and kept out control, kept people calm, and assuring them that nobody would ultimately perish, provided they kept on the ship together. And so the Alexandrian ship that had been on was shipwrecked on the sandbar off the coast of Malta, and all hands made it ashore safely. So in this final installment of our story, Paul spent 3 months on the island healing the people and preaching the gospel. And Malta even today is a very religious island. Lots of memories about Paul's shipwreck and lots of good tradition. But that's something interesting, something happened 2,000 years ago, and it's still in the memory of the people, and people visit just to see the place where Paul was shipwrecked, and probably to pick up a snake or 2. In our last study, okay, then in his company will catch a ship on to Italy. I've been there. Who else has been to Malta? You've been to Malta, haven't you?
No.
You haven't been to Malta?
Never been.
Oh, I've been to Malta. I've actually swam in that little bit there. And goes up. Very, very pretty. Very nice weather as well. Beautiful sea. But very bleak. It's not green like Britain is. It's one of these islands, obviously. Like,
Don't they have to import
Drinking water.
yeah, they've got a small desalination
Were you
plant.
thinking the same, Jim?
Oh,
Were you thinking the same? They have to import drinking water in Malta because they've got no water of their own.
They have one major impact for us. The farm I work for, we make plastic bottles and plastic jars, and they have a big canning factory where they use our bottles. I think it's tomatoes and stuff they grow, and they've got this big plant. They use our product in Malta. Can you believe that? So one Sheffield show, we found out the island was called Malta. The islanders showed us an unusual kindness. They built a fire and built us all because it was raining and cold. And Paul gathered a pile of brushwood, and as he put it on the fire, a viper, driven by the heat, fastened itself to his hand. Okay, so having just survived one disaster, you can imagine what the locals are going to think, you know. Here's it, you know, he was destined to die.
Yes, he's a
Remember,
definitely a Jonah.
yeah, remember Lawrence of Arabia? The guy who Lawrence stops being shot, and later on he eventually dies anyway. He has to shoot him, is he? I can't remember that.
Mix up.
Yeah. Anyway, he saves his life one time, and then the poor guy dies later. And of course, the Arabs they say, well, you know, it's fate. You know, you should have just let him die the first time. It was fated to die. So here's Paul. He's fated to die. He just survived a shipwreck. He should have died then, and now a snake's got him. So it must be God's curse on him. You know, he's going to die one way or another. That's what the locals would think. And they actually saw the snake hanging from his hand, and they said to each other, "This man must be a murderer. For though he escaped from the sea, justice has not allowed him to live." But Paul shook the snake off into the fire and suffered no ill effects. The people expected to swell up or suddenly fall dead. After waiting a long time, you can just imagine it, can't you? People following Paul around, what's he going to drop over? What's he going to drop dead? People are really macabre in their approach.
Yeah, they're morbid, aren't
Morbid,
they?
yeah. Absolutely nothing unusual happened to him. They changed their mind and says, "Wow, he must be a god." Poor old Paul. So, what statement had Jesus made that was fulfilled in this verse, in Acts 28, verse 5? You remember a statement in Mark 16, 17, 18? No? You shall. I think I quoted. Yeah. Okay. I didn't. I thought I put up the actual phrase. 16:18 talks about you shall be bitten by snakes and not die.
All that drinking of poison stuff.
Yeah, poisonous stuff. Now, a lot of the people, like in some of the early Pentecostal groups in America, and some of them still do to this day on some of the hills,
Tennessee.
they play with snakes, and actually some of them do get bitten, and they don't die because they're so used to getting bitten. Plus, sometimes they draw the venom in. But it's a game with them. They're showing the fulfillment they claim of that passage. So the other thing, earlier on, of course, is not the first time that the gods have come down to us in human form. Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. People at that time, something unusual was happening. They often identified it with being a god or venerating people. Malta, an island just south of Sicily, is today a nation composed. Right, Sicily, yes. An island just south of the nation composed of Malta, a large island, several smaller ones. I see. As a member of the European Union, God's special blessing came to this island because of their unusual kindness and because Paul was there. That's why they joined the European Union. When the Bible bit Paul, seeing him in chains, they thought he was a murderer, escaped from the sea, but was not getting what he deserved. The viper hangs on Paul's hands. This was taken by a Kodak, just like this one, way back then. And the people knew the venom in this particular snake was deadly to humans. They didn't expect it to swell up and drop dead. And when they saw the snake venom did not affect Paul, they changed their minds, which of course he did, have divine powers and the apostle of Christ. Paul heals the father of Publius. So another thing that's spectacular that happens. And a estate nearby belonged to Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us to his home for 3 days, entertaining us hospitably. His father was sick in bed, suffering from a fever and dysentery. Paul went to see him, and after prayer placed his hands on him and healed him. When this had happened, the rest of the sick on the island came and were cured. They honoured us in many ways, and when we were ready to sail, they furnished us with supplies that we needed. So not only did they came on the island with nothing, and now they're going away with something because they've demonstrated not only the power of God, but the influence of God in their lives. Jesus did. Paul healed everyone who came to him, beginning with the father of Publius. I don't think there's a sick person now in the 3 months Paul was there, which is pretty good stuff. The Gemini twins had some Rome, where he's headed for Rome. After 3 months, we put out to sea in a ship that had wintered in the island, an Alexandrian ship with the figurehead of the twin gods, Castor and Pollux. We put in at Syracuse and stayed there 3 days. From there we set sail and arrived at Rhegium, and the next day the south wind came up, and on the following day we reached Putodia. So there's a kind of journey they've gone through. Quite a long journey, taking quite a long time, and lots of other things happening along the way. Many ships from Alexandria must have been flying the Mediterranean in those days. The marooned passengers aboard the other Alexandrian ship for Italy. This time they make it there, so they make it without any problem. The first landfall is Syracuse, where they stay 3 days. They move on to Rhegium. The next day a south wind blows them to Puteoli, where some of the Christian brothers meet them. So this is some of the ruins. You might have been here. Some of the ruins in Rome. They found some brothers who invited us to spend a week with them, and so they came to Rome. The brothers there had heard we were coming, and they travelled as far as the Forum of Appius and the 3 taverns to meet us. At sight of these men, Paul thanked God and was encouraged. When we go to Rome, Paul was allowed to live by himself with a soldier to guard him. I think this is one of the passages that in my lifetime as a Christian has always been an encouragement to me. I've thought about this, and I've probably thought about it loads of times over the years. this situation, we sometimes think of Apostle Paul and people like that in the first century as almost super Christians. People who are always on top of things, nothing ever gets them down, never have a problem. They don't have the problems that we have as Christians nowadays. And yet that's not true. When you see all the journeys he went on and all the things he was up against and all the times he was beaten up and left for dead, the Apostle Paul had a lot of things struggling in his life. And it's interesting here when he meets his fellow Christians at the Three Taverns, when he sees them, it says, at the sight of these men, Paul thanked God. But more than that, he thanked God and was encouraged. Now that implies that he might feel a little bit discouraged. Okay? And when you feel, when you meet a fellow Christian, and especially ones you haven't seen for a while, it's an encouragement to you. Because they're still faithful, you're still faithful, and you've got a lot of memories to share together. And therefore, Paul was just like you and I. He experienced much the same type of experiences. So, you know, sometimes we put him on a pedestal and think, well, he doesn't understand what I'm going through because he didn't experience the same problems. And yet, when you look at Corinthians there, he experienced far more problems than probably most of us will ever suffer in our Christian lives. And yet he's still the man who talks most about the love of God, the mercy of God, and the goodness of God, and the joy of salvation. So he spent a week with the brothers at the end and was on to Rome. I'll look at it and bypass that. Okay. Rome was Paul to rent his own private residence and invite anyone who chose to come to his house. It must have been like it's like an open prison type of thing. And this is because the people who are supposed to bring charges against him, they're not there. And they've got 2 years to bring these charges. This is why he stays here for 2 years. They've got 2 years to come and say, this is why he's what he's been charged for, and this is the charge we want to press. But they didn't have any charges to press. And so they didn't appear. And so he's left to his own devices, much waiting for them to come along and do something. And eventually, when they don't turn up, after 2 years has gone, he's allowed to be released. He was guarded by a single soldier. This is more formality than necessity, because he was there at his own request. I want to see Caesar, he said. So, 3 days later, he calls together the leaders of the Jews, and when they assemble, Paul says to them, my brothers, although I have done nothing against our people or against the customs of our ancestors, I was arrested in Jerusalem and handed over to the Romans. They examined me and wanted to release me because I was not guilty of any crime deserving death. It's interesting, he's able to reach out to the local Jewish community. It means that his reputation is gone before him. It also means maybe some of his past, because of his education, because of his background, because of his ability, he's able to, they're interested in seeing him as well. So they come along and listen to what he has to say.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
When they're talking about examined there, is that that's not in the sense like we do it. It's probably, a lot of times they whipped him and stuff, didn't they?
Yeah, they were going to whip him, but he claimed citizenship, and that stopped the Romans doing it. But if he'd been found guilty of something, then he could have been put to death. But the Jews really couldn't make charges that the Romans would apply justice to. So this is a situation where if they'd been able to bring something concrete against him, he could have been in real bad trouble. But because they didn't really have anything against him, and as far as the Romans were concerned, it's all to do with your religion, so you know we don't want to know anyway. So he's just hanging, waiting time, biding time until he can do his 2 years, and if they don't turn up, then he's free to go anyway. So and then he obviously in 2 years he uses that time because he writes some of his letters. He reaches out to the local community. They come into get in contact with him. The guys he's chained to, the soldiers, he uses them, preaches to them, and later on we hear about the quite high up in the palace, because of the palace guards, you know, this shift rotation they've got, he's actually converted some, and they've taken that message back into the very heart of Rome itself. So it's interesting, he hasn't wasted his time. Yeah, it's he could have sat in his little house and said, oh, you know, I wanted to be on the road, I wanted to do lots of things, I wanted to, you know, but I'm stuck in this place. What, you know, he could have got depressed about it, he could have got fed up about it. Instead of that, he used it as a positive thing. Well, if I can't go to them, I'll ask them to come to me. And he utilised his time.
It's a shame how Christ was scourged because he was a Jew,
Yeah.
and Paul was let off because he claimed Roman citizenship.
And Jesus couldn't do that.
No,
Couldn't do that.
he couldn't do that. But yet, the
Yeah.
two,
It's interesting. And yet both were under false claims.
yeah,
Both were on a false charge, if you like. Yeah. Paul stayed on his ground for some time, then he left the brothers and sailed for Syria. Both sailed, his hair cut off and sent away. Okay, this is when he's talking to the Jews. He said, look, I understand where you're coming from. I understand your background. I can communicate to you on the right level because I was a Jew. I've just moved on to becoming a Christian. And he showed that by some of the things he did. I'm free and belong to no man, and make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. So the Jews became like a Jew to win the Jews. I've become all things to all men so that it may be possible, by possible means I may save some. He had the ability to communicate to other people at their level, at their background, and do the job, basically. Nobody was too high up and nobody was too low down for the Apostle Paul to talk to. Sometimes you get people, you know, at Paul's level of Christianity, you could say, well, he won't have anything to do with the normal, the common people. That never affected him. The pride aspect of his knowledge, his extra knowledge, and all his capability didn't allow him, he still kept his humility. So when the Jews objected, I appealed to Caesar, not that I had any charge to bring against my own people. For this reason I'm asked to see you and talk with you. It is because of the hope of Israel that I am bound with this chain. Now these people he must be talking to must be Pharisees, because that was the hope of Israel, the resurrection. And therefore he's building the bridges again to try and, okay, what was the hope of Israel? Knowing some of the Sadducees, some were Pharisees, because of the hope of the resurrection of the dead. So the people who came, the leaders of the community who came to him, probably were the Pharisees, and he was able to reach out to them and talk in their language and bridge that gap. It's because of my hope. Our 12 tribes are hoping to see fulfilled as they earnestly serve God day and night, O King. It's because of this hope that the Jews are accusing me. Why should any of you consider it incredible that God raises the dead? And again, he can use the history of the Jewish people and say it's something that God has shown he's capable of doing in the Old Testament. Why do you think it's such a crazy thing today? And when you imagine that the Messiah was to be able to be the best that they could produce, it wouldn't be any surprise that he's able to do amazing things. So, Paul 25 was attacked by the Jews in Palestine, and why he's come to Rome. And he had no charge to bring forth Caesar against the Jews. He was compelled to appeal to Caesar to save his life and get it to Rome. Paul always goes to the Jews fast when he comes to a new city to preach the gospel. Some always accept the gospel, but most Jews will not. And that's the same today. A lot of the Jews we talk to today, they're really in a limbo land. And but we can use exactly the same techniques and statements with them as Paul did in his time. And hopefully help them to understand. But I haven't received any letters from Judea concerning you. None of the brothers who have come from there have reported or said anything bad about you. But we want to hear your views are, for we know that people everywhere are talking against this sect. It's interesting that the church was getting to be known. Christians were getting to be known in the Jewish community. They are talking about you everywhere. And that's, you know, they're not hiding in corners, even though persecution was a part of much that they were up against. Christians were communicating and they were standing up for the faith. So it seems strange that the Jews in the capital of empire had not heard about Paul and his activities. They had no bad things, but they had heard about this Christianity. And they thought it was just another sect of Judaism. So they want to know that once really Paul to clear up that situation. And there would be a fine body of Jews. So they arranged to meet Peter.Paul on the 7th day and came in even larger numbers to the place where he was staying. From morning till evening, explained and declared to them the kingdom of God and trying to convince them by Jesus, from the law of Moses, and from the prophets. Okay? it's interesting that there's a debate over the centuries who wrote the book of Hebrews, and a lot of people, say, well, Paul did it. Because in the book of Hebrews you have arguments to help Hebrews, Jews who become Christians, but they would look out the window and they could still see the priesthood going on. They could still see the sacrificial system going on. Everything seemed to be going on as it always had done. So had they made a mistake becoming Christians? And then the Hebrew writer shows, no, rather than you haven't made a mistake. Everything that you have in Christianity is so much better than you had under the old Jewish system. And what you're looking at out the window, that's going to finish. It's going to die away. And you need to hang in there, because that day is coming, going to be coming fairly soon. Okay? Jesus said the law and the prophets testified of him. But you didn't believe and accept the teaching of the law and the prophets, you will never believe that Jesus is the true Messiah of Israel, because they testified of the Christ. So to link back, right back to their founder Moses, Abraham, and then the link back through to Jesus as being the fulfillment of all the promises of these people down through the ages, and that's what they needed to do. So some were convinced by what he said, but others would not believe. They disagreed among themselves, and they began to leave after Paul made his final statement. He says, the Holy Spirit spoke the truth to your forefathers when he said to Isaiah the prophet, what did he say? People would hear but would not understand. People would see but would not perceive. Their hearts have become dull. They allowed their ears to become hard of hearing. They closed their eyes so they couldn't see. Typical, Jesus in his life, in some of the parables he taught, talked in terms of God sending many people. And what did they do to them? Ended up killing them. And ultimately he sent his son. What did he do to him? Ended up killing him. Sad, isn't it? But none so blind as those who can't see. Go to these people and say, you'll be ever hearing but never understanding, never seeing, never perceive. The people's hearts have become calloused. They hardly hear with their eyes, they've closed their ears, they've closed their eyes. Otherwise they might be able to see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts that I would heal them. Talking about spiritual healing. Jesus quoted the same verses from Isaiah in his condemnation of the Jews who rejected him. And now Paul is simply pronouncing God's judgment on the Jews who refused to believe God and his own son. When you think about what Paul wrote, for example, in the book of Romans, did Paul care about his own people? Of course he did. In that passage in chapter 9, he says, I wish if my death could mean life to them, I would be prepared to die for them. But obviously, the only death that has any consequence in the eyes of God is the death of Jesus. And therefore, that's the death that he proclaimed. Isaiah's words were the words of God. These Jews knew that, but stubbornly refused to change. Isaiah's prophecy was fulfilled in them also. Okay? Therefore, I want you to know that God's salvation will be sent to the Gentiles, and they will listen. And for whole years, Paul stayed there in his own rented house, welcoming all who came to see him, bold and without hindrance. He preached the kingdom of God and taught about the Lord Jesus Christ. That's amazing. You're bound, you're shackled, and yet you use that opportunity to reach out to people and preach the gospel to people. And that becomes the end of Paul's ministry. So these things he did. He preached the kingdom of God. He taught the things concerning the Lord Jesus. He did all of that with confidence, and he didn't allow anyone to forbid him not to do so. He took every opportunity, and everybody who would listen, he was there to be able to bring them. So what an anticlimax, also bizarre from a strategic point of view. The book ends in AD 60-ish. Within 5 years, Paul is dead. Here's another of God's servants ended. What else is God thinking about? Sometimes we think we're indispensable. But God has got a bigger picture, got a bigger plan. And none of us are indispensable. Lots of stories about different apostles, how they met their end. The only one who's supposed to have met a good end was John, who apparently died of natural causes. Every other one died of all sorts. And a couple of them were beheaded. And so Luke ends the story of Paul in the early church with Paul's 2 years in Rome. Then his story must end. I think Luke thought this was as good a place as any to bring the story to end. Because the next section, we don't have any more from Luke's pen. But he'd done enough. He gave us the history of the life of Jesus, And now he's given us the history of the continuation of the life of Jesus in his people, the people of God, the church of the living God. And so Christianity has had a beginning. It's founded in Christ, continues in Christ, lives in his church, and we are here today in testament to that it was effective. Paul writes in Colossians chapter 1 verse 23 says, the gospel has gone out to the ends of the earth. And we are part of that, wherever we find ourselves. Somebody asked me the other day about when Christianity came to Britain. And I know in the first 100 years there was graffiti on Hadrian's Wall, graffiti written by a Christian. Not to be recommended, but obviously somebody who felt that there would have been the underdogs in their day, and maybe he was making his statement. I'm reading a history of Scotland at the moment, and it's quite interesting how the church in its different forms had an impact on different nations. If that hadn't been the case, we'd probably all be worshipping like the Norwegians do, with Thor and all these mates with a hammer, if it hadn't been for the impact of early Christians in this country we live in. So we today have a responsibility.
This is why we have graffiti then, eh?
Yes, that's it, keep all Thor right. Okay. So, what happened to me is served to advance the gospel. He's in prison. He suffered all sorts of persecutions, but he says, what happened to me has happened. God's used it to advance the gospel of Christ. So, sometimes when we see our lives progressing, and we think, there's opportunities we've missed, and maybe people we've met and haven't felt we've had a lot of impact on, and yet, as our lives touch other people's lives, you never know the good that you do, and the value you bring, and the encouragement that you help somebody else to have. And you may never see them again, and be thankful for that, but other people will have the impact of that in their lives then through time. So, praise God and all sorts of people. Because of my change, most of the brothers in the Lord have been encouraged to speak the word of God more courageously and fearlessly. It's interesting, isn't it? Paul's gone to prison, they've taken him off to prison. But we'll preach the gospel anyway. But you might end up in the same place. But we'll preach the gospel anyway. So, change your attitude. Because of Paul's strength of character, he allowed others to be confident in their faith and in their salvation, and be prepared, even as many of them did, to die for their faith in their day. Any questions?
With their faith that was so strong.